guys for all coming to this session. I'm incredibly excited to be here. And thank you to the Ogden Weber Chamber and the Women in Business and all the sponsors for putting this event on. This is really a cool event. And sometimes I think we forget how much work goes into making an event like this a reality. And so it's exciting to be here. Everybody should have a Simplicity workbook. This workbook normally goes with a 2 or 3 hour workshop that we do, and so there's going to be content in here we just don't get to. But there's great quotes, great content. You can write in it, take it with you, and if you like the class, you can always download it on my website. And I'm really excited about sharing today's topic with you because there are just some concepts that if we will catch them, they can completely change our lives. And the concept of simplicity, it's one of these concepts. It's also really timely because if you have goals, if you have dreams, if you have projects that you want to go after, there's never been a better time to go after them. And the reason is that there's never been a time in history where we have 24/7 access to the affordable tools and resources we need. Whether it's through our iPhone, whether it's through our laptops, whether it's through our iPads, there's really nothing that I can think of that we can't do anymore. And so the question really becomes, how do we do it? How do we get started? How do we step out and do something new when we're struggling to make our ends meet doing what we're doing now? I mean, how do we step out? And these are questions that, thank you.
You're welcome.
These are questions that everybody with unfulfilled dreams, everybody that has projects that they want to achieve, we ask these questions. We ask these questions, how do I leave this place to go somewhere different, even if it's not adequate, even if it's not meeting our needs? And these are questions that I struggled with. And then I really struggled with them when I found myself unpreparedly a widow, a single mom, and the sole provider of my 2-year-old son. And in a day, our life changed because we took my husband David to the emergency room. We thought he had pulled a muscle to find out that he had advanced stage bone and lung cancer. And see, we thought he'd pulled a muscle because just a couple of months earlier it had been Christmas and we bought each other workout equipment. And so David had bought me a Nordic track and I had bought him weight equipment. And so we had been working out every day for months, and we were really in the best shape we'd ever been in. David was already a good-looking guy. He fit the description of tall, dark, and handsome. And he had this huge personality that went with that. He was bold, he was gregarious, he was funny. And so the day that we got that diagnosis, see, he felt great. He was chiseled. You could feel his energy. The day that we got that diagnosis, where I wanted to just cry. I mean, it took everything I had just to keep it together. David, he doesn't flinch. He wraps me in his arms and he goes, "Jan, we're gonna beat this thing." And I absolutely believed him. I absolutely believed him. But 8 months later, the one and only time that we admitted my husband into the hospital, within 2 or 3 hours, he went into a major cardiac arrest. And then the doctors, they were able to revive him, but he slipped into a coma. And it was as I'm standing holding his hand that my husband passes away. Without doubt, that season of our life was tough. I mean, it was the toughest, most painful time of my life. And I'll never forget what went on in that hospital room that night. It was like I lost track of time. I can't tell you how long it had passed, but I can tell you that it was like my world suddenly froze. And I suddenly became very hyper alert of everything that was going on around me. If you've been in the hospital, you know what I mean, the sounds, right? The dripping of the IV, the beeping of the monitors, that smell that's in the hospital. And I'm standing there and I catch myself looking out the door and looking out towards the nurses' station. And it struck me that it was busy out there. There were nurses and they were talking and they were laughing. And here I'm in the room and my world is collapsing, and I'm hurting, and it's busy out there. And it struck me. And I remember when it was time to leave the room, it was really hard. I mean, it was really hard to leave the room, because leaving that room meant that I was leaving my best friend. I was leaving my lover. I was leaving my dad, my son's daddy. I was leaving my best friend. Walking out that door was really significant. It was very hard to leave. It also meant that I was leaving our goals. I was leaving our shared dreams. I was leaving our visions. We didn't have a plan B. We believed he was going to make it. And so walking out that room, it meant that I was leaving everything I knew. Life as I knew it was over, and I couldn't conceive of what our future looked like. Before I left, though, I made a decision, and it was a good decision, because I decided that my son, Johnny, he wasn't going to lose both of his parents that night. He wasn't going to lose his dad to cancer, and then lose me to my grief, and lose me to my disappointment and my sorrow. And I decided that regardless of how disappointed I was, regardless of the struggles that I knew were going to face us, that every decision that I made going forward was going to be based on giving my son a full life, that he was going to get to live a full childhood, a happy childhood. And so when I left the room that day, I left with that understanding. Every decision from that day forward aligned with that purpose. Fast forward 3 years later, I'm working for the same company that it put me through school. It's the same company I was working for when my husband passed away. And it was kind of a typical day. I worked long hours. I come home real quick to take the dogs for a walk before it's dark. And I'm leaning against a kitchen counter, and I'm thinking about my life circumstances. I'm thinking that my company, they keep promoting me. They're expanding my territory, but my heart wasn't there. My heart was, I wanted to be there with my son. And I catch myself thinking that I want to be that mom that takes my son to school every day, that picks him up, that sits in the bleachers and cheers him on. I want to be that mom that makes sure he gets educated, that we travel together, that he lives a full life. And so as I'm thinking these things, I catch myself looking outside of our kitchen into our living room, beyond the sliding glass window, and I get watching my neighbor across the street, and he's mowing his lawn. And then I see a couple kids in the driveway next door, and they're playing ball. And a car drives by, and as that car drives by, all of a sudden, just for a split second, just for a moment, my world freezes. And I suddenly become hyper aware of my surroundings and the fact that it's busy out there. And it was such an intense, and it was such a profound experience, because I recognized the feeling. Not to say it was the same as it was that night in the hospital, but I recognized that feeling. I recognized that I was facing a decision. Because my job of 16 years, it had sustained us well, but it no longer supported our goals and our dreams and our visions. And I believe that I was faced with the decision that all of us are faced with when we're being challenged to move into something new, when we're being challenged to walk into the unknown. And so we have to ask questions, and the questions that I ask myself, and I think they're the questions that we all have to ask when we're feeling that challenge, is, am I willing to leave this place of familiarity? Am I willing to leave this place of comfort, even if it's not enough, to walk out into the unknown? It's a big question. And I made the decision that I did. In fact, I ran to my office, I typed up a resignation letter, ran to Kinko's, and overnighted it before I could change my mind. And I decided to quit my job to start a company. And it was going to be a dental insurance company, because that's what I'd been doing. And so I decided I'll start a company, I'll sell it, I'll build it to sell it, and I'm going to sell it for millions of dollars, and it will support our goals and dreams and our visions. The company will be a vehicle to support our goals. And so with that in mind, that's what I did. And the company did that well for us. Over the years, that one company grew to 4 companies. And I ultimately sold the companies to Blue Cross Blue Shield of South Carolina, to Companion Life Insurance Company. Stayed on as their CEO for 5 years until stepping down this past year to start Jane Ann Craig International. And that's why I'm here today. And thank you. Thank you. So my mission today is I want to encourage you that regardless of how big your challenges may be, you can get through them. That regardless of how big your goals and dreams are, that you can achieve them. And I love to talk about simplicity, the power of simplicity, because it is a core principle of success. But for me, it's a whole lot more. Because for me, it's the principle that supported me to walk out of the hospital that night. It's a principle that helped me navigate and overcome my own battle with breast cancer. It's a principle that empowered and inspired me to start every one of my companies, to be here with you guys today. And it's a principle that has empowered, inspired, and enabled millions of unlikely people to do extraordinary things. And it will support you in the same way. And so let's talk about what I mean by simplicity. Simplicity, there's 2 elements that if you will catch them, if you will develop them, they'll help you. And the first is simplicity as a mindset. And that's what allows us to dream big. It's what allows us to have faith. It's like a childlike faith that says, hey, if Jane Ann can do it, I can do it. If he can be promoted, I can be promoted. If they can achieve their goals and their dreams, then I can achieve my goals and dreams. It's what allows us to dream big. And then there's a second element to simplicity, which is a strategy. Simplicity is a strategy. Well, since your strategy is birthed out of your mindset, it's really important for us to develop a simplicity strategy. And so we're going to quickly talk about 5 steps to achieving big dreams. And the first step is develop your mindset. See, your mindset is what allows you to see opportunities and obstacles. It's what allows you to turn negatives into positives. It's what gives you the faith to step out of that comfort zone in spite of your circumstances, in spite of your challenges, and go for it. And here's what's fascinating, is we are responsible for developing our mindset. We develop it and we control it. So how do we do that? Think of it like eating. We control our mindset by feeding ourselves with positive input and getting rid of negative input. So, like eating, you can eat junk food, and if you do, you feel sluggish. You might even hit that before noon crash and burn. Or you can eat healthy food, and it generates energy inside of you. In both cases, you're feeding your body, but you're getting very different results. Well, feeding your mind works the same way. It's literally like putting on a different set of glasses and seeing through a different set of lenses. You see through the lens of optimism. You see the lens of faith. You see through the lens of can-do. Conversely, if you feed your mind with negative input, we see through the lens of cynicism, of pessimism. It's really easy to slip into fear. And there's case study after case study that support this, but an example that a lot of us can relate to. How many of you in this room have seen the movie Jaws? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you have now seen the movie, how many of you have watched Shark Week? More hands go up. All right. How many of you can go in the ocean without thinking of sharks? You guys can have a practice back there. Because, see, most of us struggle with it. I grew up on the beach, and my family still lives down on the beach, and I have water toys. My happy place, the place I go to recreate, the place I go to refresh, is the beach. But I get on my paddleboard, I get outside past the surf, I can hear the soundtrack. I see sharks. And so it's impacted my ability to fully enjoy. It's impacted my ability to be as adventuresome, to go out as far. What we listen to, who we spend time with, it impacts the way we see the world and what we're able to do. And so knowing that, intentionally feed your mind with positive input. After my husband David died, I had to work really, really hard at rebuilding my mindset because I really struggled. I really struggled with grief. I struggled with disappointment. I struggled with failure. You know, when we're under stress, when we're hurting, our emotions, our minds do goofy things. And I believe that I did a good job hiding it from my son. I believe that the people around me didn't know it. But I felt like the Duracell bunny running into the wall with the same thoughts all the time. I would think thoughts like, if I was more lovable, maybe David would have fought harder. Now, guys, that's stupid. But that's what our emotions do to us. And so, fortunately, years earlier, I had learned that we are responsible for developing our mindset. And so I had to become very intentional in choosing to listen to healthy input. I had to become very intentional in separating myself from negative input. I had to separate myself from friends and family for a season that just couldn't understand that there was a time I wanted sympathy, but there was a time I needed optimism. I needed hope. I needed to be challenged. I needed to get away from the sympathy. And so to feed my mind, I'd start every day listening to motivational, inspirational tapes. Every day. I became very intentional who my son and I spent time with, what we watched. I wish we hadn't watched Jaws. But I became very intentional in what we heard. We didn't have much money then. Life was a bit of a struggle. But I put trips on my credit card to go across the country just to be around and meet other successful people that would encourage me, that would challenge me, so I could listen to inspiring teachers. Then I'd go home and I'd buy every one of their CDs, their tapes, and I'd go home and I'd listen to them for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours. See, just like eating, create time. Just like eating a meal, create time to intentionally feed your mind with healthy input. It'll make a big difference. Just like you go to the gym, just like you schedule time for meals, like a ritual, schedule time for you to get healthy input. If you hear speakers that resonate with you, get their materials, listen to them when you're not at these conferences. These conferences saved my life. These conferences are amazing. But keep feeding your minds. I'd love to have you guys follow me on my website, janenncraig.com. We're putting out complimentary material just as quickly as we can. We're working on a series right now that I'm really excited about because it's on imposter syndrome. And that's a syndrome that most of us struggle with. And it stops us from sometimes achieving our goals and dreams because we struggle with our own qualifications. Feed your mind. The second step to achieving big dreams is keep it simple. Simplicity is the state of being simple. That means it's easy to understand. It's not complicated. When I started my company, for the first several years of my company, I look back at all the materials that we did. It's almost embarrassing how simple it was. Karen, you probably remember. I mean, everything was an 8.5 by 10, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with staples in the corner, block letters across the front that had very sophisticated names like Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. Keeping it simple allows you to make good choices. When you're talking to your coworkers, when you're presenting a proposal, when you're talking to people, when you're designing products and plans, keep it simple. Those materials that I laugh at today, they built a multi-million-dollar company. Simple will get you started, and simple will keep you going. So keep it simple. Third step, learn to see the end from the beginning. In other words, start with the end in mind. And so we understand this principle. when we go on vacation, when we plan a trip, we get this. We start with the destination, right? And then we work backwards and we create our map and our plan. And we take into account our budget. We take into account how much time we have available. We take into account the purpose. Am I going to just chill out, or am I going to show my child all 50 states? Big difference. We also pick our vehicles based on our destination. See, when I started my company wasn't my dream. Now, it became a dream. I don't want to diminish that. Like, the company became a huge part of my life. But the company didn't start out as my dream. It was the vehicle to support our goals, our dreams, and our visions. That was a really good distinction to have. It helped give me perspective. Does that make sense? Seeing the end from the beginning, it also allows you to share your vision with others. Guys, if you're going to do anything, it's going to take others. You learn to share your vision with others, and others can catch it, and they can support you, and they can run with it. And this became really true when I started my company, because the first thing I had to do was raise money. And I'd never raised money before. I decided to do a stock offering, had never done a stock offering before. Went to the store, I bought a legal pad, and then I sat and I wrote every name I could think of in the world that might take my phone call, that might have money. And I spent the next couple weeks calling people, telling them they should invest in my company. And although most people that took the call were nice and encouraging, not one person invested in my company or in me. But then I had an aha moment. I decided, you know what, I'm going to make this happen whether anybody follows me or anybody invests with me. And so instead of asking people for money, I just began to share my vision. And so anybody that called me, if they called and said, hey, we haven't talked to you in a while, how you doing? I would brag to them about my company. If I ran into somebody, this is what I tell them. I'd say, I'm building a company, and I'm going to build it and sell it for millions of dollars, which we did. And it's going to be a vehicle that creates hundreds of jobs, which it did. And we're going to support causes we're passionate about, which we did. And we're going to sell it, and the investors are going to get a great return. And by the way, whoever invests in this company, it's going to help support their goals, dreams, and visions. Literally within days, I mean, I'm not talking weeks, literally within days, people started calling me. And they were friends, they were coworkers, colleagues, but some I met just in the course of doing life. So I'm at the VA hospital walking down the hallway, and I run in, visiting a friend of mine's dad. I run into a guy that I'd only met once, years earlier. But he asked that question, hey, Jane Ann, what have you been doing? And he got my vision, and he showed up at my house the next day. I met another man at a funeral. He became an investor, somebody else from Kinko's. You see, when you share your vision, people can follow you. When you can learn to see the end from the beginning, it'll give you clarity. It'll allow you to share your vision with others. It gives you a target to aim at, but it also allows you to make decisions on that basis. And it's very, very powerful. Seeing the end from the beginning, it's also what allows you to create one of the most powerful tools you'll ever have to being successful in business, and that's your business plan. Fourth step, eliminate unnecessary activities. Whether it's too many meetings, whether it's outdated processes, whether it's bad habits, you want to eliminate unnecessary activities because they become time thieves. They can distract you, they can delay you, and they can derail you. And I call this the barnacle principle. And the reason I call it the barnacle principle is I saw it so vividly with some barnacles. And one day I took some friends of mine sailing, and this was down in Newport Harbor. It was a very narrow part of the harbor. We motored the boat into the harbor. There were boats docked on this side, boats docked on this side. All I had to do was hoist the sail and get from this end to this end. But when you sail, you've got to go with the wind. So you can't just go straight, you go like this, right? Well, as I'm going like this, and I call out to my team, hey, get ready to turn. When I go to turn the boat, it didn't turn. It drifted right into those expensive yachts. We untangled ourselves, we motored out, and then we started sailing this way. I called out, prepare to turn, and when I went to turn, the boat floated right into these yachts parked over here. After 2 or 3 times, I just put the sail down and I motored the boat back. Turned out that the owners of the boat had not cleaned the bottom of the boat. As long as there were barnacles there, the boat was never going to be able to turn. We never would have gotten to our destination. That was an aha moment. I've written about it. I've spoken about it 2 months ago. We think we learn from our lessons, right? 2 months ago, after a year of planning on going on vacation to Catalina, fly down to California, get in the boat, get the boat right outside the jetty, go to speed up. The boat won't speed up. We ended up having to turn the boat back. Turned out that there were barnacles that had taken over the propeller. Not only are you not able to navigate and turn, but you lose your momentum. Never would have made it to Catalina. Now, interesting in this one, I think there's a second life lesson, because we did clean the boat every month, but the conditions had changed. It was hot. The barnacles grew much faster. If you have goals and dreams that you want to go for, check your barnacles first. Check unnecessary activities, because the quicker you get rid of them, the quicker you can get to your destination. 5th step. The 5th step is have mentors in your life. Professionals kind of get this one. You know, if you're a professional athlete, if you're a professional singer or musician, you understand that you need a mentor or coach to help watch you and help you improve and help correct and help push you beyond what you would normally do. Mentors will help you progress quicker, and they'll keep you from making unnecessary mistakes. And so find yourself coaches and mentors. But let me tell you, I am a big believer in professional mentors. I have a few clients. I invest myself in mentoring and coaching. But most of my mentors in life, I haven't paid for them. They have been my teachers. They've been deans. They've been bosses, even the bad ones. They've been speakers. Some cases I've sought them out. In some cases, they never knew they were my mentors. I think I've got some new mentors just from being here this already. Okay, got to rush. Here's the thing, is that a mentor will take you quicker. And I want to give you a couple of mentor strategies that are really cool. Number one is if someone is successful, they've probably spent years learning and perfecting their craft. So a mentor strategy that nobody even has to know about is just imitate other people that are successful. Copy their inflections, just imitate them. You won't understand the science behind what you're doing, but I guarantee you, you'll start fine-tuning your skills. Now, and a mentor strategy that is incredibly cool, that is incredibly cool is this. Music, we understand that when a singer sings, that you can be in a really happy state, and you hear a sad song or a romantic song, and it changes your state of mind, right? You can be in a sad state, and you can hear a song, and it uplifts you. So music can impact the emotion. Imagine if when you're in a job interview, imagine if you're negotiating a deal, imagine if you're presenting a proposal. Imagine if you could have that kind of impact on the people that you're interacting with. Well, you can, because they say that the brain can't distinguish between music and talking. And so there's 3 techniques that a lot of professional newscasters and speakers use. So I wanted to give you these 3 because I think they're really cool. Number 1 is learn to speak with melody. And you can practice this the minute you start leaving here. You just start. You know that how you speak, you can actually reach the emotions of the person sitting on the other side of the table. Think how powerful that is. Number 2 is use your different voices. We have a low voice, we have a mid-range voice, we have a high voice. Use that. It'll help you with your melody. It'll keep your listener captivated. It'll keep them where they don't shut down because they think they know what's coming. And then the third one is in the same way that when you read, there's commas and periods. Talk with commas and periods. In other words, a comma, you go just up a little bit with your voice. And a period, you go just straight or down. Now, why is that important? For us women, I believe it's hugely important because we get typeset for how we speak. If I spend too much time up here, People are going to think I'm kind of emotional, maybe even hysterical, right? It's not a good idea. And yet at the same time, if I speak down here, and if I put in too many periods, my gosh, people think I'm bossy, right? And so you want to connect emotionally when you're negotiating, when you're presenting. And so these are 3 techniques that'll really help you. You want a little extra help? Turn on the TV, find a newscaster that does this well. Listen, pause, repeat after them. Listen, pause, repeat after them. These kind of things will help you. Guys, mentors will help get you where you want to go a little bit faster. Mentor strategies you can be doing every day. And it's really fun. It's really fun to work on your melody and your periods and your commas on your family and friends. It really is. And you will be amazed how quickly people respond. It's awesome. Life is busy, and unless we're intentional in how we see things and what we do, we're not going to get different results. And so I wanted to close with this. The 7 days that we were in the hospital, we were really blessed in that we were surrounded by a community. But there was one particular couple that they just always showed up at the right time. They were just always there. And so that night, as I was in the room struggling with the things that I was struggling with, they were at the nurse's station handling the arrangements on my behalf. And it was about midnight when we left, and we're walking through the parking lot. It was dark, and we get under a street lamp. And James, the husband of this couple, he stops, and he gets down eye level with me, and he takes me by my shoulders, and he goes, "Jane Ann, I'm so sorry David's gone. I'm so sorry, he's gone. But your goals and your dreams and your visions aren't. Don't let go of them." Guys, those were simple words, but they were powerful because they encouraged me that in spite of the challenges, in spite of the struggles I was going to be facing, not to let go. They encouraged me and they challenged me. And so my hope today is that my words encourage you to go after your goals and dreams. And I want to challenge you. Never let teachers, never let company assessments, never let advisors, don't let anybody tell you that you can't achieve what they believe impossible. Just because you struggled in a topic, just because you weren't good at taking exams, just because you didn't get a college degree, don't buy into the belief that you're not qualified to do something great. I don't have a business degree. I didn't take an accounting class. I struggled academically. My counselors told me that I needed to pursue arts, that I just had performed so poorly academically. Don't let that stuff hold you back. 5 steps we talked about that if you will use them, if you will apply them, they will help you. Number 1, develop a simplicity mindset. 2, keep it simple. 3, see the end from the beginning. 4, get rid of the barnacles. 5, seek out mentors and practice mentor strategies. The information on my website is on here. If you jump on there, you can download an ebook that I wrote, and it'll give me your name and address, but or email. Promise we won't inundate you with emails or hard sales or anything like that. Would love to have you join me. And same with my Facebook is Jane Ann Craig International. Would love to have you follow. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you so much, Jane Ann. And again, as I did last time, I'm going to share a couple of my takeaways with you that she shared. Stay right here. No matter how big the goal, it's achievable. I think we spend a lot of time without those optimism lenses on, so I love that. And who better to stand in front of us and tell us that be intentional with your time. What a tender story and experiences that you've been through life with David and your son, and overcoming those obstacles and not letting go of those dreams and goals. So thank you for sharing some of that today. So I hope that you each leave with nothing else but just be very intentional with your time. And don't complicate it. And I think we all have a spot we can fill in the word it. Don't overcomplicate that. So thank you so much. And I do want to open it up for a few questions. We have about 5 minutes left, so I certainly hope you take that opportunity to get some of her insight with the group today. Right here.
I'd love to know a little bit more, just, I guess briefly, about as you lost your husband and then you created this amazing company and you sold it, how did you feel like the strength you gained from losing him helped you in business?
So I thought I was very purpose-driven with my husband. That purpose shifted because failure just wasn't an option to me. And then as I brought shareholders on, I didn't want them to lose their money. And then I had employees, and I realized they were relying on me for paychecks. And so I just was really super purpose-driven. I believe that most people that don't succeed, it's because they just give up. And I don't mean just, because it's not just at all, but one of my mantras was see it through, and I really hung on to that. I believe there's always a solution, and it's not complicated. In fact, if you have an advisor, if you have an IT director, if you have an accountant, I mean, there are certain roles that we have a tendency to put on a certain podium. If they can't make the information in a way that you can understand, it's not you. And I just really encourage you with that. Does that make sense? Keep it simple. That's one thing. Read the booklet. There's a lot of quotes. And if you will Google simplicity quotes, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of simplicity quotes from the world's greatest scientists, artists, talking about simplicity. One of my favorite is from Leonardo da Vinci. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Any other questions?
Guys, if you have questions, I wasn't sure about the time. I should have put my watch out here. I apologize.
5 minutes.
One of the things I want to say to you is if
People
you have questions,
whatever.
shoot me an email. If I can help, I'll do my very best to respond. If there's anything I can do to support you, just let me know. This is a real treat and real honor for me to get to be here. So thank you. Thank you. That's way cool.
Okay, I actually, being selfish, and I have a question for you, I decided before you walk away. You talk a lot about having a mentor and being a mentor. So what's some advice that you could give to the women in the room if you say the word mentor and they don't have a specific someone that comes to mind? How do you suggest that they go about finding that mentor? Or if they have someone, maybe some insight on how to approach that?
Okay. So there's the coaching and mentoring community is just really blown up, right? So you can hire a coach or mentor from everything, stretching, yawning. I mean, it's quite, really, it's amazing. It's amazing how many coaches are out there.
Right.
But I personally, I find people that are successful, and if, like, this may sound silly, but when I see waitresses and waiters that are really outgoing and friendly. I wasn't outgoing and friendly. I consider myself really shy. And so when I see somebody that banters well, I'll go to that restaurant once a week. And I'll get in their table, and I'll watch them, and I'll banter with them. And so I think it's great if you can find people that have a heart for you, and that you can sit down and go, hey, I'd like this role. A lot of people are busy, and they cannot do that. But if you look at people that there's a lot to learn, but it comes down to values and are they successful? I mean, I wouldn't go to somebody that is not successful in an area that I want to be invested in.
Right. Take your expertise.
Yeah, and be careful because there's a lot of people out there right now that may not have the expertise that they're presenting.
That's true.
There's great people out there too, though. Yeah.
Okay, last round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Is that all right?
You're done.
Okay.